Daniel Cormier, Stipe Miocic headlined UFC 252. To me, it was the perfect end to a trilogy. You had one knock one out in the first fight, the other knocked the other out in the second fight, and then in the third fight, it went to a decision. I think most judges judged it 49-46. I had a 48-47 Miocic, but it was fair. I felt Stipe definitely won. I thought Daniel Cormier won the first and the fifth. I guess the fourth was kind of iffy, but it was fair. Stipe winning makes sense. I thought it was real interesting how Cormier got an early takedown in the first round, but Miocic stood right back up, and Cormier kind of realized that that was not going to be his go-to plan. The one interesting thing is Cormier, the overhand right out of the clinch, which is what Daniel Cormier knocked Stipe Miocic out with in the first fight, was there all fight long. Stipe Miocic just did not defend it, which was really interesting because it almost knocked him out in the first round when Miocic kind of had a flash knockdown. Daniel Cormier hit him with a clean overhand right behind the ear, and Miocic's legs completely buckled out and he bounced back up. Stipe was able to kind of take over in the second round when he almost finished Cormier with a hard, I believe it was a right, but it was just a combo. It was a right as he was chasing him down. Stipe, by the time the third fight came around, had figured out that Daniel Cormier, what John Jones figured out a long time ago, tends to just lean. If he stands in front of somebody for too long and his hands don't move, he just kind of starts to fade away because he's cautious of what's coming instead of moving. Cormier survived. I actually didn't think he'd make it out of the third round. He looked in bad shape on that stool in the second round. I mean, his corner man had fingers in his nose applying pressure to get him to wake back up. And to his credit, Cormier did after a minute or so. I will say that in the third round, Miocic's corner did not coach him properly. In the third, Stipe could have hit him at ease. Cormier was slow. He looked unsure of what was coming his way. He really was out of it. And you could see Miocic landing at will, and then all of a sudden would just clinch with him up against the cage. And by about halfway through the third round, Daniel Cormier was back in it. He came to again. He was perfectly okay. I mean, as okay as you can to have a 240-pound man punch you in the head, but he was back. He was coherent. He was moving. He was throwing strikes. Of course, we got to talk about the massive eye poke that Mark Goddard missed, and I'll be the first person to tell you I watch UFC endlessly, and Mark Goddard gets praised for being a good referee only because he's been a referee for a long time. He is an atrocious official that misses calls constantly, but is also way too mouthy with the fighters. Perfect example is Cormier telling him, "He poked me in the eye," to which Mark Goddard responded, "It was a punch, Daniel. Now sit down." Now, after the fight, Goddard came out and said, "Oh, it's my fault, but I don't have replays and stuff like that." Well, Mark, then you're contradicting yourself because you're saying you don't have replays. So you're saying, how can I call what I don't see? Well, then how could you tell Cormier he got punched if you didn't see it? You clearly didn't know what happened there. So what you're saying after the fight, what you're saying during the fight are two completely different things. So you're wrong. And you missed it. And Stipe Miocic was, in Daniel Cormier's words, knuckle deep in his effing eye. Because he was. Cormier couldn't see for the last 2 rounds of that fight. That fight changes entirely, although I'm kind of happy that, in a weird way, happy that it wasn't caught because Cormier couldn't see out of that eye. They would have stopped that fight. Yeah, and it's Vegas. And Vegas never stops a fight, but they would have absolutely stopped that fight. But, all in all, Miocic noticed Cormier was coming back in the fourth. Cormier started blinking it out and then realized, you know what, I'm just going to start swinging. And late fourth, early fifth, Cormier was hitting Miocic with these right hands, and you started to see Stipe's legs kind of cross each other. Every time he got hit, he'd stumble a little bit. He'd get knocked off his equilibrium a little bit. And you could see Miocic's corner kind of telling him, dude, clinch it out. You won the fight. Clinch this out. This is his swan song. He's swinging for the fences. This is for you to hold the belt so you can continue to fight. So, really happy. Really happy with the fight. I liked it. I liked that even though it was Cormier's last fight, it would have been cool to see him go out with a win, but at the same time, it would have sent the heavyweight division in disarray. I also like the fact that Cormier was able to walk out of the octagon on his last fight. He wasn't knocked out. He wasn't submitted. He was able to walk out of the octagon, granted not being able to see, but apparently his eye's okay. But he was able to walk out of the octagon under his own power. For Daniel Cormier, I think a guy that doesn't get respected enough, truly. A guy who was the heavyweight Grand Prix champion in Strikeforce, and everybody thinks, well, he was a light heavyweight when he got to the UFC, so people saw him as a light heavyweight. His battles with John Jones, although I don't know if any of them actually count now. I think the first one does, but we figured Jones tested positive if they actually tested him in that fight too. You know, where people started to hate on Cormier just because he was going against Jones, but then it put Cormier in the public eye to where people started to see, oh, he's a goofy guy, he's a hell of a fighter, but he's a fun-loving guy, he's a great ambassador to the sport, a great father, a great friend, a great teammate, and a great captain over at AKA. Well, you start looking at that and go, oh, so this guy he's really a joy. Then he started to do commentary, and people, again, started to see his personality more, and it helped them out and understood how really a great person Daniel Cormier was on top of a great fighter. Like I said, Strikeforce heavyweight Grand Prix champion, comes to the UFC, becomes a light heavyweight in the UFC because he knew he was going to go straight to the top, but Cain Velasquez is his teammate, and he would not fight Cain Velasquez. So he decided, I'm going to basically kill myself to get down to 205, made weight at 205, beat up that division, got to Jones, couldn't get through Jones, and people kept saying, well, he's a paper light heavyweight champion. Go back and watch his war with Alexander Gustafsson. That fight was incredible. Go back and watch his 2 fights with Rumble Johnson, the one guy that everybody claimed was going to give John Jones his all. He brutalized him. I mean, he wore him down, and within 2 rounds took the title, as well as his fight with Volkan Oezdemir. Really a great light heavyweight champion. Really shocked the world, moving up to heavyweight, although it's his natural weight class. Moved up to heavyweight, knocked out arguably the greatest heavyweight champion of all time, and went on to have an incredible trilogy with him where it's not like, you know, they both got the better of each other in the first 2. And then at the end of it, that's the one of those, the judges may say Stipe won, but if those 2 guys are on the street and that's the fight they just had, both of them are just like, wow, we beat each other up. Like, there's no clear-cut winner. Nobody walked away happy after that. They both got beat up pretty bad. For the heavyweight division, I guess it's kind of clear. It's Stipe Miocic versus Francis Ngannou, which I don't know if anybody knows that fight actually happened before. UFC's done a really WWE type job of nobody remembers that. They went full Jedi mind sweep, you know, Men in Black. Just look at this light, please. Chink. I mean, him and the Derek Lewis fight. You look at Ngannou, he's back to just murking dudes left and right. But look back at it, nobody talks about the Stipe Miocic fight or the Derek Lewis fight where he was afraid to swing, and the Miocic fight where Stipe just wrestled him down and just wore him out. It's just not mentioned. They built his hype train right back up. So that looks like that's going to be the fight to make. You know, it's the second fight. It'll be interesting because I guess the UFC will have to acknowledge that Francis Ngannou has lost a fight before. And that's going to be an interesting fight. It's also going to be interesting to see where Stipe goes after that. You know, Stipe Miocic, firefighter, 37 years old. He's got a kid. I'm sure he's, you know, going to gun for another one eventually. 37 years old. He's made his millions. How much more does he got left in the tank? How much more does he want to do? So it is interesting. It's interesting where it left the heavyweight division. Like I said, I am happy in a way to see Stipe win, because if Cormier wins that fight, although he had said he was only interested in fighting for titles, so I wonder if he had won that fight, if he would have retired. But if we go off of what we thought, if he retires after that fight, is it just Stipe versus Francis for the interim belt, or for the new heavyweight belt, the vacated belt, which kind of dampers Stipe, because it's like, yeah, you have the belt, but you literally just fought for the belt and you lost for it. So it's an interesting going forward, but it was a really good fight, and all the best to Daniel Cormier and what he's going to do from here on out. It's not like he's going away. He's on commentator. He's one of the best commentators they have. So be interesting to see.